All right. Our next session is titled The Data Relay Race, Playing Team to Turn Data into Outcomes. It will be led by Rick Saporta, the head of Data Strategy and Insights from the Farmer's Dog. Rick's career has revolved around the understanding of human and now dog experiences. He specializes in building teams that serve as a center of excellence in support of all aspects of the organization by converting data into action. Rick recently joined the Farmer's Dog as head of Data Strategy and Insights, where for the third time in his career, he is building the data department from the ground up, supporting the organization's mission to improve how we feed and care for our pets. Please join me in welcoming Rick.
Hi, everybody. So thanks a lot for being here. What's everybody think of the conference so far? It's great, right? Round of applause for our organizers, Mike, Madeline, AV team. So seriously, thank you guys very much. You guys are doing a great job. Awesome. So as mentioned during the intro, this is called the Data Relay Race. It's about playing team to turn data into outcomes. Hi, I'm Rick. So just really quick, a prelude on definition of terms. So this is a heavily overloaded term, data. But when I reference it, I mean the recording of data itself, the observations, the outcomes, the insights derived from there, the team or the department, all these buzzwords, machine learning, artificial intelligence, data science, all that. When I talk about data today, I mean any of that. Right? So for example, when I say data in organizations working well, I mean any of these concepts here. Right? So heavily overloaded term, and I see it used in a whole variety of ways throughout companies, depending on where you sit there. So I work at the Farmer's Dog. If you have not yet heard about us, we make real food for dogs. So this is human-grade food. It's delivered right to your home. So this is a direct-to-consumer e-commerce business. You get about 2 to 4 weeks worth of food coming to your house. Or you get food coming to your house every 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the size of your dog. This is our buddy, our CEO's dog, and he's amazing. I love this guy. So quick side note, we are hiring. So if you are a data head or actually just love dogs, feel free to find me later. So at our company, we have a few core values, right? Deliver joy, act boldly, seek better, be authentic, and of course, play team, which is what we're going to talk about today. So just a brief background on myself. I've worked at a whole lot of startups. I've worked in insurance companies. I've done a lot of crazy things before I had real jobs. But the thing I really love doing is building data teams. So now I'm at the point where I've gotten to do this now for the third time in my career. I'm doing it right now at the Farmer's Dog. Previously, I did it at Vydia. Before then, at the Orchard. Those of you who haven't heard of the Orchard, until they were acquired by Sony, it was the largest independent music distributor in the world. If you stream something from Spotify or iTunes, there's about a 70 to 80% chance that it went through Orchard's pipes to get there. It's now part of Sony, and I got to build up the data science and BI teams there at Vydia. I also included data engineering, and now again at the Farmer's Dog, we're starting from scratch, and it's just really great. So there's something really luxurious about getting to build a department from zero, and that you really get to spend a lot of time thinking about how the different pieces fit together, and what is the ideal scenario. And you start thinking about, well, what's it going to look like when it scales, right? That beautiful word, scale. Right, what's it going to look like in this very big sense? And you get to talk with a lot of thought leaders, read their thoughts, interact with them, and try to figure this out. So this is where I'm coming from, right? And the more we get to walk down this path, right, we get to see how beautiful this flow is when data works perfectly. It's amazing. And also you get to see the parts that don't work so well, right? When it crashes, what happens and why, right? But data teams, by their nature, they need a partner. Right? It doesn't matter how great the insights are. It doesn't matter how deep your learning is. If you don't have someone to hand off those insights to, those learnings to, and someone to actually take action with that, then it's all for naught. Right? It's like, so I think of it as a relay race, right? Where you have this baton and you're handing it off, and sometimes it's just like, pling, and it hits the floor, right? Because there's no one there to pick it up, right? So I'm going to talk briefly about the data strategy and insights team at the Farmer's Dog. We have a very simple mission, which is to support the entirety of the organization. And we have an audacious goal, which is that every decision be made with optimal insights and minimal friction. Now, so what does that look like? I don't mean if you have a customer on the phone, you're like, hold on a second, let's see, it's cell C17, I'm consulting some charts. No, what I actually mean by that is that the insights are with you when you need them, right? So by the time you reach the point where you're making a decision, those insights have either been internalized by the human or they've been productionalized into the system, right? Long ahead of the time that you actually need to make that decision. But when you're making that decision, those insights are available to you. So this is the data relay race, right? And the main thing we want to focus about here is turning data into outcomes. And so there's 3 takeaways we're going to get from this. One, first and foremost, organization matters. How you structure yourself, your company, the people on your team, and the teams around you, this is critical. Flow matters, right? So what we communicate when we ask something of our data team is critical, and it impacts results. And then lastly, culture matters. So culture triumphs everything. If you're not familiar with the phrase, culture eats strategy for breakfast, I'm sure you've heard that before, you've seen that before. You look at any company, you look at their culture, and you could probably determine whether the company will succeed or fail based solely on the culture of that company. The same goes for any data initiative. You can determine whether or not a data initiative will succeed or fail based on how data-driven the culture is as a whole. So let's talk about the data relay race. Right? What does this actually look like? Data, so here, before it even becomes data, right? We have these facts, we have these events. Right? We have a customer in the UK. We have a customer on the west coast of the US. Right? These are facts. They've been to our website. They click the purchase button. These are events. They get recorded into our system, right? And they become data, whether it's clean tables, whether it's semi-structured JSON, whether it's a giant blob. We have some sort of information in our system that we then want to turn into insights. And those insights have to become actions that someone takes, and that's how we hit our outcomes. Right? So this is the flow of how we go from things that are true to the outcomes we're trying to achieve. And so I was on this YouTube rabbit hole one day, and I started watching these relay races, and it's just, I'm not a sporty guy, but if you ever YouTube some relay races, like the Olympic, they're just amazing, right? And there's this part that I just love, which is that portion where one runner's running and the other runner starts running, and then that same lag. Have you guys seen this? I don't know. This is new to me. I'm sorry. I'm not good with sports. But I just loved it, right? And there's so much in that, right? And so like, what does that look like, right? First and foremost, it's really well organized, right? So that point of overlap, right? It's a point of advantage, not conflict, right? If it's done well, right? And in contrast, if it's done poorly, that's where everything collapses. And each individual is contributing their very specific strength. The handoff is perfect, it's smooth, and there's a strong culture of team effort, of everybody moving towards the same direction and the same outcome. And they understand each other's roles, right? Because so the data analogy here, excuse me. I want to keep it really positive, right? But there is this idea of like what happens when things fail? Where do things go wrong, right? So we might think about no one's taken the baton, or we're there to grab the baton, but no one's bringing it to us, right? Moving off the metaphor, what that looks like is data derives these amazing insights, and no one's doing anything with them. Or worse, you're on the business side, and you have these critical decisions to make, right? And you're doing them blind without data. And again, here I'm using the phrase data to mean the broader concept of whatever you want to call it, your machine learning initiative, your AI initiative, the actual raw data, whatever you need to make that decision, you just don't have it. You're not getting it, right? And so let's look into this a little more, right? So the business team needs to act, right? But they have no data, so what happens? They either don't make a decision at all, right? So they freeze, they get paralyzed, right? That's terrible, right? Most seasoned executives, you're not going to have that situation, right? You're going to go with your gut, right? The brain, the gut, best machine learning tool there is right now, right? So you're going to go with that, right? You might run the analysis yourself and be like, you know what? I know how to do this. I'm just going to do it myself. I don't need my data team for anything, right? Or you just stop asking for data altogether, right? And you say, you know what? Never mind. I'm going to go out without data. It's just, I know it doesn't work, and I'm just moving on. And so how might the business deal with this problem, right? First and foremost, maybe they just don't, right? I call this the Grin and Barrett method. This is just how things are here, right? They leave, right? You lose people over this. I can't tell you the number of people I've interviewed, and their number one reason for looking for a new job is just they feel like they can't have an impact, right? Or they don't have the tools they need to have an impact. By the way, I'm hiring. Okay, sorry. But yeah, so they might throw money at the situation, right? And they say, my data team's not getting me what I want. Put more people on the team. Or the data's not good. Throw some more engineers at it. Or you know what? My in-house team isn't good. Get me outsource a vendor to it. Screw it. The vendor sucks. Let's go get some new AI tool. You know, I don't want none of this human intelligence. I want the artificial kind. Alternatively, they might embed somebody on their team, right? So they'll bring someone onto their team to say, you know what? Well, if you're on my team, I get to dictate your priorities, and you get to do what I say. And so they have their own analyst, their own scientist, and they say, OK, you are my marketing data scientist working on my marketing data, and here's what you're going to do. So that's on the business side, right? What's it look like on the other side? So this is the side that hands off the baton. So the data team derives insights, but nothing happens, right? No action's taken, no outcome is achieved. Or worse, maybe they don't even have insights into why they're even doing the thing they're doing, right? They don't have visibility into it. And so how do they feel? They feel frustrated, disempowered, right? They stop giving it their all. They feel blind to what's going on. And again, maybe they leave, right? But I promised I was going to keep this positive. So let's focus about what it looks like when things go really well, right? So what does this like beautiful data flow really look like when things are going really well, right? So first of all, it starts with a spark, right? And that spark can come from anywhere, right? The person on the front lines on the phone with the customer, some seasoned executive, some data scientists on their spare time looking into something, that they see something, right? And they realize there's some alignment, and they're trying to understand, OK, well, maybe I can hit this outcome with this piece of information with some sort, and they try to start digging into it, right? And so once identified, we quickly shift focus to the outcomes, the actions. What can we do with this? How will this help us achieve our larger goals, right? And it moves away from the, can you get me a report about? And instead, it becomes more of, can I use this to drive outcomes? How do I drive my outcomes? And there's this strong communication and strong alignment, and everyone's aligned on that ultimate goal, and there's this very clear handoff. And in this, there's a lot that we can learn from modern-day product management. Right? They're able to tackle these really big problems. They focus on the problems that are being solved. Right? So from our world, right, we focus on these outcomes. Right? We're trying to improve performance, regardless of however we might call performance for our business. Right? We're trying to improve it somehow. Right? And that's usually via enhanced decision-making. And the product for us is the insights that's derived from this knowledge and data. And we have this very beautiful framework that comes from product management, which is about discovery, design, development, and delivery. Have you guys seen this framework before? Is this commonplace? You guys, yeah? Cool. I'm seeing some nods and some total blank stares. No problem. So the discovery phase is about learning, right? And to be clear, this is not learning from the data. This is learning about the problems we're trying to solve. So this is learning about the business, learning about the outcomes. So this is the data team, or the people producing this, in this case, the product, the insights, learning about the problems that can be solved. Right? And then there's the ideation. Right? And we can spend an entire talk just on this portion alone. Right? But here, right, what we're trying to do is we're prototyping. And the great thing about the data world is you can do all of your prototyping with pencil and paper. I will argue that any single data initiative, you can pretty much figure out exactly what you're going to do at the end of that initiative. Right? It has a very finite amount of outcomes. Right? You're creating a new chatbot. What are you going to do with the communications you have, with the feedback you get back from the customer? How are you going to monitor whether it's doing well or not? You're creating segmentation. You're segmenting your customers, your products, your stores. What are you going to do with those segments? Once you have those segments, if you have 5 of them, what are you going to do? If you have 20 of them, what are you going to do? Right? You're predicting a number. Right? The number's either going to go up, it's going to go down, it's going to stay the same. What are you going to do when you get back those results? And you can figure out those actions. And so with pencil and paper, you can just draw, this is what I'm going to do, this is my prototype. Is this going to get me what I need? Is this going to solve my problem? Right? And you should be able to figure that out. And if the answer is not a very clear yes, we'll keep prototyping until you get it. Right? So the learning phase and the ideating phase is about taking all of the risk that comes with these giant artificial intelligence projects and these giant machine learning projects and getting all of that risk out up front, right, and figuring out how to actually make it succeed. And then we get to executing on the solution. Right? So we ideate many solutions, we go through them, we iterate, and we find the solution that will solve the problem we're trying to achieve to get to the outcomes. And I would argue that if we have these first 3 phases done right, then the actual handoff is a cinch, right? And so that handoff, right, there's a fork in the flow here, where there's generally 2 very broad categories of how we might deliver these insights, right? Either we're going to take an immediate action on it, right? This is this one-time use, there's something we're going to do right now, or we're going to take repeated action on it, right? In this case, we're going to automate it, we're going to productionalize the whole system. In the first case, I would say that the entire handoff is a 5-minute face-to-face conversation, right? If you're being asked for a report or you're asking for a report, I'm going to suggest that maybe you're doing things wrong, right? The whole concept of the report, maybe the report's good for reference, right? But you shouldn't be focusing on that report. Focus on the outcomes you're going to do with it. If you can't solve this in a 5-minute face-to-face conversation, double check your flow, what's going on there. Alternatively, right, we might be doing something that we want to make a little more permanent, right? So it's either part of our product, part of our core offering, and in this case, it's the complete opposite, right? It's much more than 5 minutes, right? Here, we're actually talking about a much bigger handoff to an engineering team. It might be a specialized engineer team. It might be a general software engineering team, maybe an outsourced team. And I'm going to also argue that this is waterfall in nature. It doesn't matter how much buzz of a word agile is. This will always be waterfall, some component of it. We're going to get it down to very finite micro stages, but it's going to remain waterfall in concept. Yeah, so going back to this. So we have our discovery, our design, development, and delivery. And so we were talking before about the business team and how they might deal with this problem of no one's handing them the baton, right? And this concept of embedding a person on their team, right? So how many people here have like an embedded data scientist, an embedded data analyst? Cool, a whole lot of people. And so I would argue that the person you want to embed is a data product manager, not necessarily a data scientist and a data analyst. You want to centralize the scientist and the analyst, the people working hands-on with the data. You want to keep them working together, right? And what you get out of this is that they themselves get to develop a much broader understanding of what the company as a whole is achieving, right? So customer service is asking for this chatbot, and they want to be able to communicate with customers better, or they want to understand, hey, my customers are sending us emails. Can we just auto-tag them, do a little bit of NLP magic on them, and get a whole bunch of tags, and boom, solve the problem? Yeah, and incidentally, the legal department is trying to read contracts with some robots. What can we do there, right? And then you realize that these projects are nicely aligned, right? And by centralizing your team, you get this benefit of having these projects aligned. And then you get the benefits of someone looking into this and say, oh, coincidentally, right, my marketing team is also asking for this other thing. They don't know anything about what's going on with these NLP projects, but it would benefit them as well, right? And so you get to have those benefits coming by centralizing your scientists and your analysts. And they get to interact better, and they get to accomplish better, right? And the main thing we want, really, is the product management, where the product is the insights derived from our data, right? We want to be able to have that help us solve our problems and help us hit our larger objectives. Right? Where are we going? So how do we organize? In the product management world and in the actual product development world, there's these 3 very core roles, which is your product manager, your designer, your engineer. I think there's a very nice analogy here of your data product manager, your data analyst, and your data scientist, right? Where they all are very crucial to all these different concepts, but I think they fit into a very nice primary role here, right? So your data product manager is responsible for the discovery, right? So discovery is de-risking the situation, right? Figuring out what project you're going to take on and why, what's it solving, and how is it helping you to solve that. Your analyst is responsible for the human data interface. How is the human going to interact with my data, right? And how is the data going to help solve this problem? And then the scientist actually takes that and helps build it, right? So that's where you're applying the deep math knowledge to really get at the core of how to solve these problems. Now the delivery, going back to the fork in the road, right? I would say that if it's a short, immediate action, right? Who's ever closest to the data, who's ever closest to that specific piece of work, they're the ones who deliver it, right? Doesn't matter who it is, just that person deliver it, face-to-face, boom, done. If it is a larger project, there you want to get your data product manager involved again, right? And so if we go back, does this go back? Yeah. Notice we've got engineering in here too, right? and engineering has a data product manager on their team as well, right? And that's crucial, right? Because there's a constant handoff, not just with data and business, with the data team and the business, but there's a constant handoff with the data team and the engineering team as well, right? And a lot of times they overlap because a lot of the skill sets overlap, right? But it's kind of like race car drivers and mechanics, right? A mechanic can drive a car, or a race car can fix a car, right? But they're two completely different skill sets. And one more thing here also, you don't need 5 different data product managers, right? One human being might play point for 2 or 3 different teams, right? Oh, and here I have this as well, right? So one human being might wear multiple hats, right? So I wanted to kind of give an example of this perfect flow and what that might look like. Running a little short on time, so I'm going to skip over that. But I hope you're starting to get the sense of why you want to embed data product managers. You want to have your scientists and analysts centralized, and you want to have the product managers focus on the outcomes we're trying to achieve. Okay. Focus on the outcomes, move off the solution. This I got for the vendors in the room. I actually got that from a sales book when I was selling BI tools 15, 20 years ago, helping clients succeed, right? It said move off the solution. It always stuck with me. Shiny new things are just shiny new things, right? So I don't know how many people have been in, if you've experienced that shiny new object syndrome, right? Where people just want all the latest, greatest tools. They're really fun. I love them too, right? I love playing with a lot of these toys, but they don't really help us get to where we're going, right? And I have this saying that insights without action is just entertainment, right? It's like watching TV. You watch an awesome documentary. That's great, but at the end of the day, you didn't accomplish much. So culture, this one I'll kind of keep kind of fast. There's a lot to be said on culture, and we could talk for hours on it. But competitive advantage does not derive from artificial intelligence, right? Does not. I hear all the time people say data is my moat, right? Data is the moat I draw around my company. I get to know my customers better. It's a moat, right? It's not, right? Data is not a competitive advantage. Insights is not a competitive advantage. AI is not a competitive advantage. Your advantage comes from execution, it comes from action, it comes from outcomes. Right? It's the flow of information. It's how these things work throughout your whole organization, how the different people on the teams play together. Right? And it's having empowered individuals well aligned. So if we want to drive data culture, oh, did I lose my mic? Yeah. If we want to drive data culture, first and foremost, you want to glamorize the effort and the results, not the roles, right? So focus on what's getting accomplished, not the roles that people are living in, right? Knowledge is power. Don't hoard it. This is a very common theme with data throughout organizations, especially the larger the organization gets, the more political the organization gets. People want to not share knowledge because it's some concentration of power to get whatever other aspects they're trying to get, right? This hurts everybody. Right? And it hurts, and the whole concept of centralization, they try to work against that because of this whole hoarding concept. Right? Don't hoard knowledge. Share it. Empower individuals. You get to accomplish a lot more. And lastly, be data literate. I didn't touch on this too much, but speak in distributions. If someone gives you a number, send it back. Ask for the distribution from which that number came from. Right? Be able to understand that. Right? Someone tells you you're going on a trip, it's going to be 72 degrees. What are you going to pack? If they tell you it's 72 degrees and it's usually between 70 and 75, that's one piece of information. If it's 72 degrees and it's usually between 50 and 80, completely different world, right? Be able to speak in distributions or at least some sort of sparse on the numbers. So our summary here. First and foremost, embed the data product managers. I'm going to keep driving this home. Not the scientists, not the analysts. Focus on the actions and the outcomes. Don't request reports. If you hear yourself requesting a report, right? Check yourself. You want to describe the desired outcomes, right? Empower the people you're working with. Talk to them about the outcomes you're trying to achieve and have them help you with that. And establish a culture of data-driven collaboration, people working together. And with that, that's how you get to this concept where every decision gets made with optimal insights and minimal friction. Thank you. Yeah, so the question is the data product manager sitting on the external team as opposed to sitting on the data team and interface, right? Would they sit on this team interface to the data, or they sit on data interface to the team? So two things. One, very similar words. It's not a project manager. It's very much a product manager, right? Just to clear up the concept for everybody. In the sense that it's not about managing the tasks to get done and what order things are getting done on, but it's about the vision of how we're going to accomplish the outcomes of the business or the specific department they're in. Where do they sit? That to me is, so a lot of what drives my decisions in those concepts is how data-driven is the company as a whole, and how there's going to be a lot of hand-holding, right? So it's either the data team might need some hand-holding on understanding the business might need some hand-holding on understanding how data works, right? And depending on the different skill sets in the teams, right, it's where that person's going to offer the most value. I mean, literally, like, who's their manager and who's their boss? Generally, you're probably going to have like a VP of product, right, which it rolls up into. How that actually gets organized, that's not as critical. What I mean is actually just the human and where those human-to-human interactions are happening, right? And not with what SQL are you running, but what can you accomplish with data? Other questions? Yes?
Can you give an example of how your team helped the farmer's job make decisions, or how it led to an outcome for the business?
Can I give any? I'm trying to think of an example I could give on a recorded stage performance. How about after this? I'll give some examples. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So when you think about the transformation that we're all going through and coming out of, as you mentioned, data, now we're into data scientists and understanding that role within the organization, where do you see that transformation, really taking place in the development of people and resources on both sides? Because it's on the data side, and it's also on those areas that you just talked about from the activation within the business units.
Yeah, that's great. So we actually just had this talk internally with our team, right? In the sense of, so the question is, like, development of people, data scientists, right? Where's the data, like what is the role of data scientists and the development of people? So a few things. First of all, on the data science side, I think if you're not predicting things, if you're not looking forward and you're just looking backwards, right? That to me, that's more of like data wrangling, right? Like understanding. It's still very critical, don't get me wrong, right? But when I think of data science, I think of the mathematics that goes into making predictions or, strong segmentations. So, I mean, that's my personal opinion. There's 20,000 blog posts on what is a data scientist. But more importantly is the development of people, right? And so at our company, one of the things we talk about is, like, how much do we want to be, the data team, how much should the data team be proactive and how much should it be reactive, right? In this sense, being reactive is someone comes and says, hey, I need this report or I need this information, I'm trying to achieve this outcome, can you help me? Versus we're aware of what the outcomes of the whole organization are, and helping them to achieve them, right? And digging into the data and finding things to help them achieve those, even though they didn't come and directly ask us for it. Right? And so the idea is, the more we can develop individuals, right? We give them these insights. Now we elevate the data capabilities of the whole organization, or at least that team that we delivered the insights into. And then being able to elevate them, that also frees us up to elevate ourselves and work a little bit harder and push ourselves and become smarter or better or do something that we weren't able to do before. And so it's this constant pattern where we lift them up, right? And then we jump up as well. And we lift them up and we jump up as well on that specific expertise of data. Right? And ultimately, everybody becomes more data-driven and more data literate.
Yeah, any advice, or what is your experience with remote groups, meaning the business side is in one location and the data scientists and data analysts in another location, and how that embedding works? Yeah,
that's a great question. So the question is thoughts on remote. So first of all, I'm remote. Which is great. So I'm remote more than half the time. I live very far from New York, and my company's in New York. But I think remote is great. I got a really great piece of advice. I think it actually came from the book called Remote, which is that if you're going to set up a team where they're not all face-to-face, at least have a good amount of time where they do spend face-to-face, right? So whether that means like flying people to different places, like doing some off-site, have some way for that, that bonding to occur, right? And not in a business sense, like just literally in a human-to-human sense, right? At the end of the day, like, these are still human interactions, right? Until all the robots take over the world, we're still humans, right? And so having that human interaction is critical. And then once that happens, then everything else, just have really good technology, right? Invest in good microphones, invest in good video conferencing software, and it actually works really smooth.
All right, that is our time for today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rick.
Thank you all.